What have I learned from Melvin Van Peebles, Martin Luther King Jr., and George Bush?
And it's pretty easy to see that I'm of mixed heritage here. I know when I was growing up in South Central Los Angeles, they referred to people that looked like me as light-skinned brothers. They called us yellow brothers too, but generally it was light-skinned brothers. Among the black community, we seem to identify a whole lot by skin color. I'm not aware of any other race that focuses on skin color as much as we do, but it seems to be a big deal with us. When I wake up in the morning, I just don't really concern myself with the fact that my family is made up of black people, white people, and Latino people. I just don't think about that. That's not something that takes up my day. What I start thinking about is what I'm going to do for the day. Now that I'm retired, well, real easy. I don't do nearly as much as I used to. Now I come on camera and do stuff like this. But I don't waste my time complaining about being black. I just don't. You don't get to say in my family that you couldn't do it because you're black, or you couldn't do it because you're part white. Whatever it is, race is just not an option. That seems to be the big go-to thing these days. And as I said, I think a lot of people probably making a lot of money pushing race, but it's just not something that I worry about, not something that I've concerned myself with. I thought about who my heroes are, and I started acknowledging my heroes. Started thinking about the people that have been more instrumental in my life. I've told some of the people that I've been closest to in my family how much they mean to me. I've told them how much they've influenced my life. Like my father-in-law was one of them. He probably wouldn't want to be on camera, so you won't be seeing any pictures of him. I've had some very, very positive influences in my life. One of them was this guy right here. Now, a lot of you probably might not recognize his picture. You might not recognize his picture, but you might recognize his son. His son's name is Mario Van Peebles. His name is Melvin Van Peebles. And the reason why he sticks out in my mind, and the reason why I think about what Melvin Van Peebles has been in my life, is because he said something that has always stuck with me. What he said was, and I'm loosely paraphrasing here, but he said something like, early to bed, early to rise, work like hell, and advertise. And that was important to me because I found out that if I did those things, I became successful at whatever I was doing. Success might not come overnight. Success might come in one form or another. But when I stuck to those principles, when I stuck to that philosophy, things worked out pretty well for me. And to me, it made sense that if you do what successful people do, you probably get what successful people have. And this picture of Martin Luther King thought was different than what I've seen in most places, so I decided to look at this all the time. But what he's done is legendary. You don't need a lesson on Martin Luther King. Martin Luther King probably is the single most important legendary figure to black people in our country. So I think about what Martin Luther King was all about all the time. It's another one that I think about too, and this one, I don't have a picture of him shown. I don't have a wall big enough for everybody, but I think of what James Brown said. James Brown said, "Say it loud, I'm black and I'm proud." One of James Brown's records was talking about he doesn't want anybody giving us anything. Just open the door and we'll get it ourselves. Well, James Brown, Martin Luther King, and others weren't all about asking for special treatment Just equal treatment, that's all. Another one of my heroes, and I know a whole lot of blacks are not going to like this, but George W. Bush. And he became one of my heroes after we got attacked on 9/11. I'm glad that he was in office when we got attacked, because he did what he said he was going to do. He took care of business. He didn't sit still and talk about how we won't rest until we do this or we do that, and then end up doing nothing. George Bush took it to the enemy. George Bush kicked a lot of butt. We went over to Afghanistan, and we kicked butt there. Then we left and went over to Iraq, kicked butt in Iraq. That seemed to be a very strategic move to me as a veteran. Because I noticed that when we got through, that we had flanked one of our worst enemies, Iran. We had taken over and kicked butt in Afghanistan on one side, and we had Iraq on the other side, and right there in our crosshairs, right there in the middle, Iran. And went, George Bush, you got my respect. Thank you very much.
If you enjoyed this video, please like, subscribe, and share it with a friend or an enemy.